close to the car. This is a big ass gear, 120 inches. Okay, so this is me doing the exact same start at 35%. I'd like to go up on the one count. People like to go with 2 because it gives them a little bit more time and peace of mind. Start off with 2. Here I am on my 1 on back, and the buzzer goes off. So I'm driving my hips forward, foot down, and driving, reset, and away I go. There's a lot more to this maneuver, and I'll go over it later. Okay, I'm going to try to demonstrate some of my standing start techniques that I've developed over the last, say, 10 years. And I'd like to think that as of now in the master's field, I'm an expert in the matter. And here are the things that I've learned. Some fine points and not so fine points. The main thing is the whole goal of a standing start is to move forward. Full stop. That's all you have to remember. You need to move forward as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So in my technique, my goal is to not have any energy leakage. And by that I mean every split second and ounce of effort on the bike is going to propelling me forward. Anything else is wasted energy. And the reason why I mention that is this is maybe the fine point, or maybe not so fine point to certain people, is this idea of how far forward you need to lean in the standing start. When you watch guys like Ali Fielding, any of the top guys, Roy, it's up for debate, like what's faster, going far forward or what? And frankly, it's just personal preference, and it's bike size, it's morphological reasons, but the one common factor in all the top starters is they are able to make that bike move as quickly as possible, as soon as possible. So for most people, they're not going to be at that level. And what you want to shoot for is just cutting out that energy leakage, like I mentioned. And the reason why moving forward, leaning forward is so efficient is because it gets your weight over that leading pedal, which is, in my case, the left pedal, even though my dominant leg is my right one. I am of the old school of starting with your non-dominant leg, so once that quarter stroke is gone, then the dominant leg kicks over, if that makes sense. Also, the idea is that as you're pushing down on this side, you're going towards the Côte d'Azur, going to the blue line, the blue band on the apron. And there's a lot of people I see start with their dominant leg, and I get it. I mean, it's like that's your strongest leg, and you're able to get it forward. But for most people, I think they're taught to start with their non-dominant leg, and that's what we'll go with for this instruction. And that said, going back to this idea of energy leakage and cutting that out is what I've noticed with a lot of masters and people that aren't proficient, not to take anything from masters, but to take anything that aren't with people that aren't proficient in the standing start, is there's a ton of energy leakage. And what happens is, again, the reason why you lean forward is to get the weight over that pedal. It's not so much to lean forward. I think people misinterpret that they just want to get forward, but they don't move. What you want to do is, on the way back, when you come forward, is not only come forward, but push down on that leg. And here's where the energy leakage comes from. The energy leakage comes from, let's back this up, collapsing of the upper body. Because what people don't realize, and it took me a while to understand why I'm good at the standing start, is I have a very strong upper body, and especially the core. And the reason why that's important is you're counteracting the forces. As you're pushing down, the bike wants to go down along with it. You need to push and hold yourself up. Not only the bike, but you want to collapse down on it. And what you want to do is brace yourself against that force. So these are opposing forces that are going on here, not just in your upper body and your shoulder, but in your core, because this is what's connecting the two pieces, the upper body and the lower body. So what happens is you want to brace these opposing forces. And frankly, most people don't have that strength. And this is why the top starters are pretty powerful individuals. They might not be massively muscular, most of them are, but they're very athletic, and they're very, very strong, and they're very, very strong from head to toe. Because I'm not that massive, but I'm pretty fast in the starts. But so that's where the energy leakage comes from. And that's what you should focus on, is not losing that energy, not so much the leaning forward, but not losing that energy. And so what I would tell people to work on, and just for longevity in general, work on your core a lot. It's so vital for cycling, to the point where most people ignore it to their peril, because you're bent over in track cycling especially, and in road racing, you're bent over, and what's supporting you is your upper body, your core, that part of your upper body, not your lower body. But your core is what's supporting you, and you should be able to ride your bike, lean over like this, with no hands. I basically leaned over. I'm really leaned over now. So work on your core, because that helps everything. The upper body comes in for the standing start, and you may or may not need that, but having that strong core coupled with a strong upper body is a really great combination for the standing start. And with that, of working upright rows, opposing forces, shoulder presses, believe it or not, upright rows, strengthening your upper body, particularly your shoulders, for pulling action, working on your grip, doing dead hangs of all things, really help in that. And moving on from the upper body part, what I would recommend is practicing the actual start, because that sounds really obvious, but it's not so obvious because most people don't practice it enough. I do it once a week all season, from March till October, well, end of September, and once a week. It's one of the few workouts I don't miss. And the reason why I do that is the repetitive nature of it, but also the visual and audio cue of listening to the start timing. And I use a timer my buddy Carlton Hall created years ago, time trial simulation. But listening to that audio cue and not getting lost in the beeps and not having to run them in my head like I did before. I would pretend in my head, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, then go. Which is fine, but it's not the same of having that sound and that cadence burned into your mind. And I highly, highly, highly recommend that, because it puts you in the mind space of actually racing. Because it's when you get up there, the moments from when you're sitting down in the chair to getting up, getting your bike locked in or held, is absolutely nerve-wracking. And then it gets ratcheted up as soon as the 15 count goes down. And then the 10, and then by 5, it's bad. So the more you hear that noise, the less that'll be a factor in scaring you. And so with that, you have to find a way to practice starts. As I demonstrated earlier in the video, I did it how I do it outside. I lean against my van. It's not for everyone, for many reasons. A, the balance component of it, traffic, and more importantly, if you use straps, it's unnerving to be strapped in, leaning against the van and doing all this. And jigs, there's jigs out there, blocks of wood, all kinds of different ways of doing it. Buddy, that's honestly the best, because it simulates the real world situation for most people, being in a held start as opposed to a gated start. But for me, that technique, working outside, it has been absolutely invaluable. So practice, practice, practice. That's how you get to Carnegie Hall, and that's how you get to the World Championships. But yeah, so those are just two things I like to focus on to tell people is cut out that energy leakage. Don't collapse, and that's what I see all the time. Don't collapse when you go to get up. And the other thing is just simple practice, because that's what I see kills people, is that the nervousness. The nervousness is always going to be there. But if you could take away some of the factors of that nervousness, not being used to that cadence, not visually and mentally setting yourself up to put yourself in that position, the breathing of hearing the 15 count, that pause, and then the 10, and then the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And to that, you go on the final beep, not on the 1. And I don't know how many people have gone off on the 1, but it's probably plenty, because I get it, especially if you've never done it before. You think 1, you go. It's like, no, 1, then go. Yeah, so I hope that's helpful. I'll leave some comments and I can do a refresher, because there's so much technique involved in this. In the first fraction of a second, there's like 8 things going on at the same time. And it's just too much to cover right now in one video and not bore people to death. So if you have something you want me to cover, like the angle of your setting up your pedals, when to stand, I'll cover that. But I need comments, I need feedback, and I need to know whether or not people are watching these videos. So thanks for watching, and I appreciate it. Stay safe.